People of Reddit, what is your weirdest paranormal experience? In 1998 I was walking home from a late night library study session and there were 4 very large shiny deep gold things in the sky. They were twirling downward like those seed pod things on trees that sort of helicopter themselves, except these were bigger than cars and were doing it very slowly. I had stopped and was staring up at them before I even realized it. Then I noticed that about 20 people were standing on the other side of the road. They had come out of a bar. There was only the bar, several houses, and a bridge, but that was basically it. These days I would never let my daughter walk home like that, but whatever. I thought it was safe. I hollered something along the lines of, "What is that?" And one of the people said she thought it was spaceships, but I knew that wasn't right, and I went home and told people who thought I was probably crazy. A few years later, when I was older and understood the internet more, I looked for any kind of news story or anything, and nothing was available. I wish for the life of me I had talked more to the people watching the same thing outside the bar, which Google tells me is now gone. But I was more afraid of them than whatever was in the sky. It was bizarre. In the intervening 20 plus years I haven't gone crazy or ever seen anything like it again, lol. I don't remember this, but my mom told me the story. We moved into a new house when I was 4. And one of the first nights I had a dream about a nice old woman who was talking to me the way old women talk to little kids. How old are you? Do you like preschool? The same night, my mom had a dream about the same old woman. But instead of being nice, she was screaming at her to get out of her house. Edit. Yes, you're the only person ever to ask how I, the child who does not even remember the experience, knew it was the same woman. You're very intelligent. I used to work events at a historic home. It was well known that the place was thought to be haunted and everyone had their own stories. I never believed any of it until one night I was the last one in the house because I was locking up after a particularly late wedding, probably around 1 AM. I went up to the top floor and the second I crossed the threshold I felt the air change. It got almost dense and knocked the breath out of me. I booked it out as fast as I possibly could. Another coworker said one night when she went up to do the same thing around the same time she clearly heard footsteps and assumed it was another coworker coming up to join her. But when she turned around no one was there and the other coworker had actually been far across the property at the time. Another person said they were walking down the corridor when the door they were about to go through slammed shut in front of them and locked. The facilities guy was absolutely positive the original owners of the home, from the 1800s, were doing the haunting, so he started playing classical music at night if he had to be there late to appease them, and claimed they started leaving him alone after that. Nothing too crazy ever happened to anyone, but man did it make you not want to be the last person in there at night. When my son was a baby we had a sound monitor next to his crib and my wife was downstairs and heard a voice on the other end of the monitor saying, "What are you doing, cutie? Huh? What are you doing?" She said it sounded playful like how people talk to babies or pets. She ran up to his room thinking someone was in the house and he was just laying there awake looking around. When he got a little older and could walk and talk some, he was laying on the living room floor playing with blocks. Something down the hall caught his attention and he got up and stared down the hall. I asked him what was wrong because he kept looking at me all concerned and then looking back down the hall. He ran over, climbed in my lap and pointed to the hallway and said monkey. I think maybe he was seeing some kind of shadowy apparition and monkey was the only word he knew to describe what he saw. That house always creeped us out, even before he was born. We always had that weird feeling like someone was watching us, and one time I got slapped on my foot while laying in bed. Went running with my dog and saw a white outline of a young woman running alongside me out of the corner of my eye. When I looked over, nothing. About 5 minutes later I got a call that my great grandmother had passed. She was in hospice. Still think about that a lot. Edit. I think it runs in the family. My mom will straight up say I need to call X. I feel weird and sure as shit there's a disease/illness going on. My great grandmother used to talk to dead people and my family thought she was crazy until they figured out the house she used to live in was owned by the couple she talked to years earlier. Found this out a year or so ago. Been about 5 years since she passed away. Suffering a bad illness, I saw faces everywhere. like 10,000 faces in my carpet. I was sure there was a vengeful god mocking and punishing me and trying to teach me a lesson for my benefit. Then I fainted. Then I got super medicated and realized I was just having hallucinations. It was pretty ducking convincing and terrifying, yet strangely comforting at the same time. I don't really believe in paranormal, but if anything I've experienced was paranormal, it was this. I wouldn't say if it's weird, but as a non-ghost believer, it was weird for me to experience. My grandfather passed away earlier this year, around mid-May. He and I were really close. When I was little, he would walk me to school, push me on the swing while he sang, and did anything a little girl could ask from her grandpa. We lost that connection when he developed dementia in my later teens, and we had little choice but to move him out of our house into a place that could offer him 24-hour care. So I wasn't in the area when he passed, but my dad was with him. That call was hard to receive. His funeral was early one morning. That evening I was sitting in my room just thinking, when I decided to go out into our deck and just be in the silence. We have 2 rocking chairs out there. I went outside and sat in one, and immediately the chair beside me rocked like someone has sat in that one as well. I watched it for a bit, wondering if I was just seeing things. And when the chair fell still, I shrugged it off and started rocking. A few minutes later, the second rocking chair started rocking beside mine. I would pause, and after a few seconds it would also stop rocking. I thought it was the movement of my rocking that caused the other chair to rock, and even now I wonder if that's really what happened. But what happened next made me doubt that. My grandpa loved when I sang or played an instrument for him. In the early stages of his dementia, what really got him to smile was the ukulele. So when I brought one home from Hawaii, I played and sang for him, and he would grin and clap at the end of every song. So that night, I don't know where it came from, but I got an urge to play the ukulele outside. I hadn't played in months at that point. I went inside, grabbed my ukulele, and sat back down in my rocking chair and began to play and sing quietly. I felt kind of stupid until the other rocking chair began to rock ever so slowly, and my chair was not moving at that point. It rocked for a bit then stopped, but I kept playing. I strummed for a while, and when I was done I sat there in silence for a few minutes, said goodbye to whatever was in the chair, and went inside. I'm still skeptical of this situation. I don't know if the rocking was complete coincidence, or if something really was sitting next to me that night. I've sat in that rocking chair dozens of times since then, but the other one has not moved on its own. My brain says it was nothing, but my gut tells me that it was my grandpa listening to me one last time before our final goodbye. I miss that man, and every time I pick up my ukulele I think of him and that night. Not sure if it's paranormal, but freaked us out. As an EMT firefighter we see some shit peeps. We had a lady code on us in the back of the ambulance leading up to that event. She was talking about how she was ready and this felt right to her cause she was painless. She coded we got her back fairly quick, oddest shit ever. She came talking saying thank you boys, but you don't have to. She was dead like 30 seconds ago. She coded again, and we had to keep working her to the hospital. They took over. Done. Go back to our station and nurses like to call and let us know the outcome of some of the serious patients. So they called to let us know that this lady wanted to thank us. Cool, she lived. Nope, she did not. She coded like 3 more times. That night stuck in like lapsed memory or something where she just wanted to thank everyone. We go home, come back the next tour, family came by to say thank you for everything we did. This woman had written thank you cards the night before thanking family and Ems. She wrote a thank you card knowing she was gonna die soon, and even a heartwarming letter thanking us. It was bizarre reading this and thinking what just happened. Love these questions. This story is true to my own experience. One night I was in my room playing video games. I turned my games off and went to lay down. As soon as I closed my eyes I heard a voice in my ear say, "Don't worry, we're here." It was so real, I felt the breath in my ear. It was insane. For the next 6 months there would be a light knocking at my bedroom door every night at around 2 AM. It was a knock, as if someone was trying to see if you were awake, but didn't want to wake you if you were. I would always call out yes or "Who's there?" Every time I went to open the door, no one was there, and this wasn't exclusive to just me. I would have dates over, and they would hear it too. This was every night for a solid 6 months. One day I was getting into the bed and there was this dark shadow in the corner of my room rocking back and forth. It freaked me out. This shadow was blacker than anything I had ever seen, and it was swaying. Nothing in my room created that shadow. It made me incredibly uneasy. The next morning I decided to tell my mom and dad. My mom jumped up and said that the same thing was happening to her. As we were talking about it, the back door sling open and slammed shut. And this was crazy, because this door was pretty difficult to work. You had to pull the handle all the way up to disengage it to open. After that happened there was no more knocking and no more shadows. I did some research and it turned out that ghosts tend to wander in from the woods. We live next to a wooded area, so there's that explanation. I was visiting family in another country. We were driving one night between two coastal cities. It's late, probably 1 AM, and the road is dark with some light posts every now and then. We were talking about mundane things when a huge dog with a fanny pack ran in front of the car. I didn't have time to slow down, so we hit it. Instead of a whimper or any animal sound we heard hijaputa, which means son of a bitch in Spanish. The dog got up on 2 legs and ran into the foliage. My cousin and I screamed, and I floored it until we arrived to a toll. That was the weirdest thing I have ever experienced, and to this day my cousin and I retell the story at family gatherings. Lived in a haunted house for a little bit. That's what the landlord told us anyways, but we were all skeptical. Once one of my roommates borrowed my LOTR replica of the One Ring, because of course. When he came home, he set it on the top of my bookshelf. I saw him do this, and then came into the living room with me. We are sitting on the couch talking, and hear something drop under the couch. It was the ring. Have no idea how that happened. By that time we were so immune to shit happening that it was like, hey, Christine, go back to talking. Once I was house and dog sitting for my then GF's sister and her BF. They always told me about how weird stuff would always happen, like washer and dryer door would randomly fly open, the front door would open if it was closed, or close if it was already open. Just weird stuff like that. Didn't ever really think much of it, because I've never personally experienced anything like that ever. Well, the first night I was there I was laying in bed with the dog when all of a sudden the dog got up and started barking like crazy in the direction of their closet, which was open and was the length of the entire wall. I looked in that direction, didn't see anything, so I just turned around to try and calm the dog down. And as soon as I put my head back onto the pillow, every single one of the hangers started to move in order. Just as if someone took their hand and dragged it along the entire length of the closet from left to right. No windows were open and the bedroom door was closed. That's the first time anything like that happened, and I couldn't come up with some reason that was even remotely possible as to why it would be happening. This comes from when I was under 6 years old, 4 to 5 years old, if I remember correctly. During this time period, I was looked after by someone my family knew when my parents were at work, being picked up from her house after they had finished work for the day. During 3 of these instances, something unusual occurred. In each I walked towards the road leading to her house, only to be seemingly teleported to some kind of hallway that had a small room by its side. On one end of the hallway there was a wall with a painting of sunflowers on it, while the other end was connected to another hallway with what appeared to be hospital staff walking by. The room had 2 sofas, one on each side, one painting above each sofa similar to the one in the hallway, a potted plant, all of them identical, in each corner, and a window covered with curtains. The first 2 times I was there with my mother, even though she was supposed to be at work. We walked into the room, had a brief discussion about it and left, walking toward the seeming hospital staff. When we got close to them, I was teleported back to the other person's house, with my mother nowhere to be seen. The 3rd time was somewhat different, though. When I walked up to the room, I noticed my mother wasn't anywhere to be seen. As a result, I panicked and ran toward the crowd, with the exact same result from the previous times happening. I never talked about it before and only much later realized how abnormal the whole thing was, still not knowing how to make of this. My first experience of sleep paralysis. It made me realize where some of the stories of monsters/demons came from. I imagined how some of the first people to talk about them would have been, and how that could have easily been twisted into horror stories after being retold. I once lived in a haunted loft. Lots of odd things happened there, but my sister vehemently refused to even listen to the stories. At first, she would actually snarl when she called us liars. Then one day she was visiting, and while she was in the bathroom she began shouting, "I'll be out in a minute. Get away from the damned door." My roommate and I looked over, and the door knob was twisting back and forth by itself, while my sister was getting angrier and angrier. When she burst out of the bathroom and saw how far away we were from the door, she turned totally white. It was absolutely hilarious. That place turned several non-believers into believers. I wish I could have taken that ghost with me when I moved.